Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christeen
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership. Welcome back, Christeen. We're on part 2 of exploring and the topic of developing and growing leadership teams in our business.
Yeah, it's the last conversation. It was really good. I was just commenting on, how much I really liked the things that we dove into and talked about. I hope that they're going to be valuable and helpful, on this journey, because it really is. It's a journey of developing, mentoring, and identifying your leadership team. And it's extremely important on the outcome that it's going to have in your business, like how your business is going to grow and perform.
And I hope that last episode really helped to kind of take out of the myth of what leadership is and how people become leaders. Because I want to make it more granular and more like emotionally impactful, like how developing our leadership team and our own leadership, where it affects us. It affects our wallets, it affects our families, it affects our very being. So it's really important to make it something that is relatable and something that is approachable.
Yeah, and I love the word that you chose, myth, because I feel like there's so many myths and, beliefs around leadership and like, what is leadership and how can I be a leader? And, what's the right leader and what's the wrong leader? And a lot of what we get in our leadership is we're told, pick someone, right? Who do you want to be as a leader? Like what, and you have this mentor, right? Maybe it was your coach or, a family member or somebody that you really looked up to. And the truth is they were the leader that they thought they should be. And it's more about becoming the leader that you are, right? You're not going to be like this person that mentored you. You're going to be your own leader, and that's okay. And I think also the other thing that I hear is a struggle, and I struggled with this myself, is I'm going to be the wrong leader because all these people were telling me, coaches and stuff like that were telling me, you need to have softer edges. You need to lower your expectations. You need to do this. You need to do that. So they were telling me, what I should do. And it wasn't serving who I really am. And it created a lot of I'm not enough conversation for me as a leader. And then it also confused not only myself of how I should communicate to my team or how I should show up, but it confused the crap out of my team where they're like, what is she doing? Like, she's not soft and squishy. Like, there's no soft edges here. Like, who is this person today? So they probably thought, at sometimes like I was crazy because I was creating confusion by not just stepping into who I am as a leader and knowing who I am with rough edges and high expectations. That's okay, right? I just need the right people on my team who value that as well. And that's, that made all the difference. So I think there's a lot of myths, and fixed ideas and, false beliefs around what leadership is and what it really looks like.
And I think that's a great point. And, I've been coaching and mentoring people for 20 years. And when I got really deep into Clifton strengths, they would get their assessment. People get their assessment, go, I can't be a leader with those strengths. And, that's not really correct. I would say the number one thing that I have seen and feel and coached people, the number one thing people need to be a leader is they need to be authentic. And they need to be as authentically themselves as possible. Because, what is a leader? Well, discipline and this and that and all this. Or, Hitler was a leader. Mussolini was a leader. Mother Teresa was a leader. Martin Luther King was a leader. Gandhi was a leader. Nelson Mandela was a leader, right? So they were showing up with their authentic selves. So we don't want to be like certain leaders, but we want to emulate other leaders, but not emulate them in their strengths and talents. emulate their authenticity, how authentic they are being themselves. That's the number one strength I see that leadership needs.
Yeah, and as yourself, right? And that doesn't give permission, I don't want this to be misunderstood. It doesn't give permission for you to go in and, drop the hammer on your team and, go around like an ogre and, just boss everybody around. It's that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, learn how to be your authentic self, learn how to show up and communicate effectively, right? And with, compassion, but also with, some authority and responsibility, right? And it's all about, like, one of the things I learned, it's how am I going to show up in the moment? What's my mindset? How am I going to communicate my needs and expectations? And that is going to have the biggest impact on the outcome of my needs and wants in the company when it comes to leadership. And that was the main ingredient. I was like, what's the mindset I'm showing up with, right? Am I in a learner mindset, or am I in a growth positive mindset? Or am I in this negative, what we call, the judger mindset, when we're pointing fingers, thinking everybody's so stupid? It's like, that is not going to be well received by our team. And whether it's at a management level or ownership level, being a leader, that negative spin is not going to be well received, and it's going to be picked up on in our communication. It's going to be hard to define our expectations when we are so, in the thick of it, in the mud and the muck, and how we're expressing our needs and wants and expectations.
And you brought up a good point. That doesn't mean you can go around stomping or dropping bombs or being salty and sassy to people. That is the overwhelm in people. I'll get very salty when I'm overworked, overwhelmed, and tired. And that's not my true authentic self, but it shows up at work. It shows up at places. That's not me authentically. That's me in overwhelm. So that's why we need to develop our leaders, because it allows us the space to show up as our true authentic self instead of overworked, overwhelmed, overtired, over everything, and bringing that not only to work, bringing that home, bringing that into relationships. And people will start to think that's who we are. We're tired, irritated, short fused, impatient. But most people, once I really get to learn and know about them, they're none of those things. That's everything else that we're juggling every day. So, that's why it's even so much more important to develop our leaders, so we're not pushing every rock up a hill, both ways all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, this is part of the mentoring and coaching for leadership growth, right? Is making sure that there's the tools there to communicate. There's the tools that they can lean into, because we weren't born with these things. We weren't taught these things. How do we show up with a great mindset? How do we show up to have effective conversations? What questions can we ask, or how can we ask them? So it's important for us, as we're mentoring our leadership team, or even finding that mentoring that we need ourselves as leaders, that we're giving ourselves and our team the right tools to do this, and that space to learn in. And that's something I know, Steve, you and I have highly invested in our leadership team, is not only are we mentoring and coaching them and providing that space, they're learning how to do it with their direct, people. And then we are also supporting each other, and having our mentors and coaching our space for that, even supporting one another to be able to have those tools and conversations, when things aren't perfect, or we do want an outcome in something. So I think really giving them the tools and the space to learn and develop, those skills and talents that they might already have, but they need to be fine-tuned, or they just don't know how to do it. That's typically what I find.
Yeah, they don't know how to do it. One of my proud mentoring moments was one time there was a challenge with one of my lawn care technicians, and my manager and the assistant manager, they got out his Clifton strength assessment, and they're like, okay, this is his top 5 strengths. How do we support him with those strengths. And one of the things I learned as a coach and a mentor, as you know, if I coach people from my strengths, it's really doing them a disservice. I need to coach them in their strengths and support them in that way. But before we were doing the Clifton Strengths, it would have just been, why does this guy always have a problem? Why has he always got an issue? Can't he just do his work? Isn't he's getting paid enough to do it? And the conversation turned from that to like, okay, how can we support him? All right, this is his top 5. How do we, communicate surrounding his top 5? And the challenge was handled like professionally, supportively, and productively. And everything worked out well. And it's just a completely different mind shift. And it's a tool. How do they communicate? What support do they need?
Yeah. So I think too, in some of the benefits with those is you're creating that space, you're giving that permission, right, for your team members to know, oh, this is how I can sit down and solve this problem, right? Otherwise, it's like they default to, well, what do I know best? And some of them, what they know best might be yelling, screaming, stomping around, having an attitude, pulling somebody in, reprimanding them, but if we give them the proper tools, then we're giving them the space and the foundation to respond properly and coach, and correct versus react. And, and then what, right? It's like they're creating their own story. It's like if we're not giving them the information, they're going to fill in the blanks. And that blanks is typically what we don't want as a business owner. And I think both of us have been in those situations where we're talking to somebody, who's overseeing the rest of the team. And we're like, you did what? What happened? Okay, tell me more about that. And we're kind of palm to forehead moment where we're like, how the heck did this happen? And when we rewind it, we realize, well, we probably should have ensured that they had the tools to effectively manage this versus assume that they were just going to do it the way I would do it.
Absolutely. And, before we did the choice map work and the mindset work, it was really, we were the answer guys. I was the answer guy. My manager was the answer guy. And once I learned the choice map and how to ask questions, effective question asking, it was like, well, a lot of times now when we're in a situation or a challenge, it's really about what questions should I be asking? What do I want? What do I need? What do they need? What do they want? What's possible? As opposed to just looking for that simple, quick answer. And the issue with being the answer guy is you always are the answer guy or the answer person. They never have the ability to start figuring stuff out on their own and growing and developing as a leader, as a foreman, because they always lean on you. And that's the system we can create if we have to be the answer guy instead of the question person. So having the ability in teaching our leaders how to ask questions is really one of the most powerful starting points in developing leaders.
Yeah, and the benefit to that is they're not always coming to you to solve problems. They're learning to solve them themselves. So that is really the key to effective delegation, is to where if you turn something over, you're turning it over to the degree where it never comes back to you, right? But if we always, it's like, with our kids, right? If they ask 3 times, so we have to ask them 3 times, it's because we trained our children to tell them, oh, once mom or dad says it the 3rd time, I better get on it, right? So it's the same with our team members. If we allow them to continue to come back to us for all these decisions, that's what we're training them to do. So we have to ask better questions of like, well, how would you solve it? Did you try 1, 2, 3? And there's some rules out there that you could utilize of getting them kind of into that habit of solving it themselves versus bringing it to you to solve.
And, one of my questions that I ask my team is, well, what questions have you asked? What information do you need? And what permissions do you need? And, we're working on our clockwork certification. And, it really helped me. Okay, well, do they have all the information? And if the answer is yes, they do have all the information and they still can't decide, what permissions do they need? Like certain members of my team can spend up to a certain amount of money. So we really have to ask, what's the question thinking around it? What information are they lacking or needing, and what permissions are they needing? And so it's making sure that it goes back to expectations. What are they expecting from me? What am I expecting from them? But being honest about that. And the thing is, I don't always make the right decisions. Probably 85% of the time I make the right decisions. My team doesn't make the right decisions all the time, but probably around 85% they make the right decisions. So just living in reality that when we give people the opportunity to make choices and decisions, they're not going to be 100%. We're not 100%.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the mentoring and coaching, right? Is being authentic and honest and letting your team, your leadership team, know when you yourself made mistakes, right? Because it shows them like, I'm not perfect, and my team knows where I'm like, if I get up into their business, I do not belong there. Like I am going to mess something up. Just as easy as last night, I sent somebody a link, to sign up for a course. Surprise, I sent them the wrong link. Guess whose job it isn't to send links? It is not my job. So then I had to go, okay, well, I sent them the wrong link. Can you send them the link? And really what I should have done in the beginning was just ask that person to send them the link, right? So that's one of the things that consistently, shows up is with my team. I admit to them right away where I'm like, so I kind of went into your lane a little bit. So can you fix it? And they appreciate that. And I think it also shows how much I appreciate them and realize like, yeah, that was your job. That was my bad. So, admitting when we're kind of stepping out of line as well as leaders and letting our team know like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that, or I could have done that better. Or, hey, we did this, we addressed this wrong, or I addressed this wrong. This is how I should have addressed it. So, it really helps them see like I'm correcting course just as much as I'm asking them to correct course.
And I shared this story in the other episode about the youngest son being the one who apologized, right? And that was really a leadership step. Let's support the mission. What we're doing now is not supporting the mission. So, part of being a leader is not pointing fingers at other people. It's accepting the responsibility of that, but it's also moving past it. One of the challenges that I've had in the past is like dwelling on stuff and just beating that dead horse when in reality, what my team needed, what I needed to do was move past it, learn from it and move past it, learn and move past everything, right? Because the future is coming whether we want it to or not.
Yeah.
If you're, I've been working with people getting ready for 2024. And we all realize, well, 2024 is coming whether we're ready or not. And so our future and our company's moving forward whether we're ready or not. So not beating that, that's an old term saying, right? Beating a dead horse, but not just dwelling on stuff, realizing it and admitting it and moving forward. I'm going to make mistakes. My team's going to make mistakes. That's part of it. I think Mike McCallowitz there was a quote about if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. Just don't keep making them over and over again. I probably make some mistakes 2 or 3 times, but then I've learned my lesson. I have a saying, sometimes I don't learn real fast, but I learn really well. So sometimes making the mistake and not admitting it was a mistake and then doing it again and going, okay, ouch. And then doing the third time and going, ow. And then having enough of that. It could be whether, I'm not managing my team. I'm not showing up authentically. I'm not managing my cash, whatever it is, we feel the pain a couple of times. And we run into that with coaching people on profit first. They don't fully do it. They don't fully do the profit first. They kind of do their own version. And then they're like, these allocations aren't working. This profit first thing doesn't work. And it's like, well, are you doing this and that? And they're like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm doing my own version. Like, well, let's do the full version of it. And they're like, oh, then they get closer. And then it's still painful. Then once they're fully committed to it, fully committed to the leadership of their cash in their company, then 6 months later, they're like, wow, this is awesome. And that's why I call Profit First my freedom system, because it allows me to stop worrying about paying bills, when I'm going to pay it, how I'm going to manage cash. It just takes it over. But as a leader, I had to admit to myself that it's okay to let a system manage cash. I don't have to be the cash hero of my company. There's systems. I have systems for everything else. Just give the system over to the cash over to the system. And that's just one of the things I held on to pretty tightly before I finally got there.
Yeah, and I think a key point that I heard, you share in that story, Steve, is what we have in place now in our business, it may not be working. It may be a broken system. The business may not be, in your story, as financially healthy as we thought it might be. And the Profit First system is exposing that, which is showing, the pinches and the pain points. And this could be the same thing as you develop and mentor and coach your leadership growth in your business, is the culture that you have now may not be the right culture. There's going to be pain points and challenges as you make this shift with mentoring, defining expectations, defining success paths, communicating about what's wrong. And one of the important things that I know, we really had to address in our company is making sure that our team members felt safe and supported and heard, that they could come to anybody who's on the leadership team and say, hey, this is happening and this is how it's making me feel. And either maybe this is what I want to do about it, or maybe they say nothing else, but us receiving that and not making them wrong for it, making sure that they feel heard and going, okay, so tell me more about that. How can we fix that, right? What can we do better? And then also talking about it in a group environment, right? So it's like, I know in business, like the old school way of thinking is like, you're on a need to know basis and you just don't need to know. But one of the things that I have found is the more transparent we are with our team and the more open we are with the challenges in our company structure and with our culture, the more willing they are to fix it together. So it's not just me and the leadership team. We talk about the challenges and problems with everybody. And they're like, well, how can we make that better? Well, that's something we can easily fix. And they're all on board moving the culture in the right direction and holding each other accountable for that change that's really going to impact the future of the company.
That used to be one of my favorite sayings. You're on a need to know basis and you don't need to know. What's really interesting about it is really what I was honestly saying was, I don't know, and there's no way I could actually ever tell you. But, not wanting to admit that I didn't know that whatever information I needed to know, it's a very, very aggressive way of saying that. It's pretty funny. When I think back on saying that you're on a need to know and you don't need to know, it's not very leadery. Yes,
well,
that's
it's
funny.
one of my favorite sayings, Steve. But for me, because of where my strengths are, it has a completely different message, which means, I have relator strength as number 2, which I connect with only a small amount of people deeply. And it's saying, you're not quite in my circle. So I'm not going to tell you what I don't want to tell you. So maybe later.
Yes, it means something different to everybody, right? I mean, absolutely, depending on their talents, their strengths, and it's the same thing with our leaders. As we're developing these leaders in my company and working with the emerging leaders at Green Profit Academy, in seeing the conversations that we had 2 years ago and just at the retreat, and it's amazing in the sense of how much more aware they are and how much more they see in themselves and other people and in the business, because they went from thinking that they had to know to now realizing they have to ask. Like, they're just master question askers instead of the know-it-alls. They're the curious about things, and the respect that they have now with their peers and also at work, because they are now the person that helps people get stuff done, get more stuff done, and they don't hold stuff so closely. They're much more open and accessible to people. It's very interesting. The productivity. We have one of the members at the Green Profit Academy. She's going to be running the division of a company now. And that came from her becoming more curious and more vulnerable and more accessible for her team, and also allowed her talents to step up and show the owner of the company what she was capable of as a leader.
Yeah. Yeah. We have several of those that's happening with, which is amazing. And I want to also take the opportunity, because it's like, there's a lot of benefits. We could talk about the benefits all day, right? And it's like, and what do we need in there? We need that open communication. We need to lead from example, right? And this, I think, ties into one of those challenges, but there are going to be challenges when you start mentoring and coaching and developing your leadership team. I mean, don't think it's just going to happen, like you're going to come in and be like, hey, y'all, we're going to do this. And everybody's going to be like, yeah, there's going to be people that object to it, right? And there's going to be several reasons why. Like, one, it's change. Everybody's afraid of change, right? Change can be scary. So what does this mean? So if you start mentoring and coaching your leadership and trying to grow it, and you get some, pushback, realize that pushback can come from many different places. It can come from the fear of change. It could come from their own conversations they're having in their head of, well, man, this sounds like a lot of scary stuff, or we're going to have to step into these roles, or we're going to have to communicate, or we're going to have to be vulnerable and, ask questions. And they may be having this conversation with themselves of, well, I don't know if I can do that. And am I enough? And do I have, the skill sets? And maybe my position's going to change. So it can be very scary. And there will be pushback when you come in with this, intention of mentoring and coaching and developing, some of these people in the company. And the other thing that I want to share around this is they might truly have their own agenda, which means they don't belong. So, just don't toss that idea out of, man, I'm getting all this pushback from this person. Ask the questions around the fear-based pushback, but then also be aware of, does this person have their own agenda? Are there things they don't want to be found out? Because when you start doing this, it's going to create a lot more transparency and connection and communication. And some people do not like that. And they don't like it because there's their own things that they are pushing and managing in the business that they don't want you to know about. Core Growth Strategies provides business growth management solutions through cloud accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic business consulting programs. Our team works with small businesses in lawn care and landscape and trade industries throughout the U.S. We increase our clients' business acumen by creating business performance transparency through financials and strategic advisement based on industry best practices and benchmarks. Our experienced team provides support, guidance, and coaching, thereby allowing our clients to connect with viable data and discover their own solutions. Core Growth Strategies programs and services are designed to get your business from where it is now to where you have always dreamed it to be. Visit us today at coregrowthstrategies.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't miss our exclusive limited time podcast special. Just mention promo code GPA Pro to any member of our team during your complimentary consultation, or enter the promo code on our site when you sign up for one of our online programs. That's promo code GPA Pro.
And I think that's where we've seen where the people that got you, to a certain point won't get you past that point. And they're revealed once you start this type of development. And, when you start doing, there's a lot of accountability in this, leadership, right? We have yearly goals, we have quarterly goals, monthly goals, we have check-ins, we do one-on-ones with people. And that was a big change in my company, was the one-on-ones where we're meeting with people and and ask them questions on a regular basis. And it's not job or performance based on the one-on-ones. It's, we ask, where are you on the choice map? Are you a learner? Are you a judger? And, share a little bit about that. Share wins and successes. What's your biggest challenge? And questions, what are you thinking about lately? I was against that. I pushed against that because I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, I just could not wrap my head around doing the one-on-ones. And I fought against it. We started doing it and it was uncomfortable and it was awkward because we always talked about get this done, do that. I don't want to hear about your challenges or your successes. Just do your list and here's this thing and get that done. And, but now that we've been doing the one-on-ones for now, it's going to be 6 years. And, my tech supervisor does the technicians and my managers do their direct reports and I'm doing, my management team. People look forward to it. And it's just opened up a lot of transparency and vulnerability in the company, beyond the numbers, but it's helped us to support each other past just the getting things done, the production mentality, which will work for a long time when you're trying to grow a team. Getting it done all the time can't be the only thing that the team focuses on. And people, like you said, they're going to be found out. And people are found out when they go on vacation. And they leave the door open and people see what they're really doing or not doing.
Yeah.
So that has happened, or as a company grows, usually they're the person that's kicking and screaming as the company grows with mutable laws or, new team members who are outperforming them, maybe doubling their production rate or doubling their capacity. And you'll see that they'll push and scream back at that. So sometimes the person that is yelling the loudest needs to be let off the bus.
Yeah, no matter how long they've been there. And, I'll speak to the power of one-on-one, Steve, is one-on-ones really created the transparency that I needed in the company to start mentoring and growing and kind of nurturing that leadership culture, right? Because it really gave the space and the time for me to sit down with each team member. And now I don't do every team member, right? Like I have my people that I do, and then the production side has their people that they do. And so with the one-on-ones, and it really created that space and the opportunity for them to feel heard, safe and supported, and for us to address their biggest challenges. And there are things that have been shared with me in our one-on-ones over the years that at times, I've shared these stories with you, it's hard to make me speechless, but there were things where I was like, I have no words. Like, I just have no words for this. Like, I just need to sit on it. Is this really happening? Doubt, but it raised the awareness of what people were doing in different parts of the company. And they would show up and show me one side of them. But on the flip side, with all the other people, they were being somebody completely different and unacceptable, really. And it didn't contribute to the culture. So the one-on-ones are really powerful in mentoring and coaching the leadership development, and that concept being rolled out in the company. It creates transparency. And it's not saying that one-on-ones are meant, to complain and throw people under the bus, but it's, hey, this is my challenge and this is how I need you to support me. So then you can say, okay, so you're having a challenge with this person. Let's talk about how you're going to address it, and then send them off to address it. It's not saying you go solve it as the business owner or as the leader. You don't go solve it. You can empower that other person to solve it, depending on the role and depending on the situation. So those are very powerful, and they're important when you start rolling out that coaching and mentoring, with your team. And it's a great place to start. Start one-on-ones with just your leadership team. Just start with them.
Yeah. And one-on-ones, typically they don't last more than 20 minutes. And I would encourage you to put a 20-minute time limit on. We have 9 questions on our one-on-one sheet. we don't have to get to all 9 questions. If something is really pertinent, like we share, what is your big goal and what is your small goal for the next 2 weeks? And they share that. What's keeping you up at night? Some people say nothing. Some people say my mom's sick, or, I have a child that's like struggling in a subject or something, and we're trying to work on that, but that's keeping me up at night. So it just brings a humanness into it. I can't fix any of that for them, but I'm just aware of what they're going through. And that doesn't mean that we don't hold them accountable to their performance, but actually that's where that desired accountability steps up. That's where our team says, hey, they care about me as a person, as a human being. I'm not just here to make money for the owner. They actually care about what I'm going through, and they're listening. And that creates that desired accountability.
Yeah. And our one-on-ones have 3 questions, and it's really about like, what's your challenge and how can I support you? Like, what are you focusing on? What's your biggest challenge right now, and how can I support you? So it's very direct. We're also a very high executing task minded type of team. So it's like, my people like to get in, throw it on the table, get it sorted out, and get out. Right. So it's like, that's the type of team I have. So the 3 questions are very effective, and we find out what we need to know, and we discuss it. And it's like maybe 20 minutes. So, but it's very informative. And we even have, team members, like I did a one-on-one this week, and they said, if I didn't have this one-on-one with you, I wouldn't have known what my highest priorities are, or what I should focus on right now that would best support the team. So thank you for taking that space. And that was important, because I could have went on assuming this person knew, and then what would have happened later down the road? I would have been like, well, why didn't you get this done? And why didn't you get that done? So they took responsibility to show up and say, hey, what should I focus on? That's my biggest challenge right now. I don't know what to focus on and what's the highest priority. And I was able to give that time and space to really say this, and this. Thank you for asking and clarifying.
Yeah. And 3 questions, it's great. And you have to create a one-on-one that works for you and your team. Some of our questions are somewhat redundant. Like the last question is on a scale from 1 to 5, how safe and supported do you feel, right? And some of the questions go quick, but the challenge question is definitely a more in-depth question. So you have to develop what works for you. And like I said, you don't have to do all. If they get to 2 questions, that's fine. We just have them there. We have a couple of team members, they don't fill the form out. We don't even use the form. We just literally have a conversation. How's things going? Tell me about what's going on. And, we'll ask them about their pets or their kids or whatever. But if they have to fill that form out in any capacity, that's a shutdown. So we're respecting their strengths, and we don't make them do that. And other people, they come with it completely filled out. And other people come with 1 or 2 word bullets in it and use that from discussion. So there's no one way. That's the absolute only way to do the one-on-ones. The key point is doing the one-on-ones, seeing, hearing, and listening to your team members.
So I want to go into, how do we empower our leaders, right? And I think the one-on-ones is one key ingredient to empower our leaders. But I think that there's some other things that are important, because empowering our leaders, we have to be consistent is one thing, and we can't break the rules, right? So it's another one of those lead by example. I know in my company, it's like, even though I'm an owner, I still show up and expect every rule in the company applies to me as I expect it to apply to my team. So I think that's really important is, and that also has created, respect, right? Towards like my team sees that if there's, I will enter my PTO time, right? Just like they do. If I am going to be late into the office, I message everybody and let them know, hey, I'm running late, right? So it's like they see how I'm showing up, and I think that like lead by example is very important, that the leaders understand like, hey, we're not here to break the rules because we're filling this role. We're here to show them how it's done. We're going to show them how to walk the talk. And that's extremely important. And then holding your leaders accountable for that too is important as well. So it's like making sure that they're not, kind of coloring outside the lines when it comes to the company policies and rules and culture in the company.
And that can be a really big issue if you have long-term employees who kind of create their own narrative and they don't have a clear vision of the immutable laws, right? So I have a number of family members in my company, and I consider it a compliment because they're like, you could never really tell who is family members, like, because we all abide by the same immutable laws. Like, we have certain like variances for different people in the company, but it's not based on the fact that they're family members. They may have like our office staff. Somebody might have small children, so they need to get the children on the bus. So their start time's different, but they still have to follow the same immutable laws. We have some people that are in their 70s. They don't work a full work week. They come in at 9 and they work till 1. So they're not following the same 7 to 5 o'clock as my lawn tech, but when they're here, they follow the same immutable laws. I have to follow the same immutable laws. My whole family does. So that's a compliment when people say that. But when we have a leader who gets in a position that they start stepping outside of the immutable laws, it really creates a weak foundation for the entire company. And when the owner allows it, and I've been guilty of it, when the owner allows it, it creates an even weaker foundation, because people say, well, this immutable law thing isn't real and our mission isn't real. So I always remind myself as the CEO and owner of the company, it's always to serve the mission and the members that serve the mission. And that means supporting and following the immutable laws. So my team knows that. So they surround it and they support it all the time. And as a leader, we're trying to keep everybody on the same page in the same vision, mission, purpose. And that's what our job is. And this is part 2. And you've heard me probably say it 30 times by now, over and over again, because that's the clarity of those tools. And for myself and for our leadership team.
Yeah. And really, it's like one of the things I do in the company is I will back up my leaders, in front of the team, where I say, this person, they really need to be supported this way. I'm going to support them. Or if somebody asks X, Y, and Z, I really depend on you all to show up and do X, Y, and Z for them. Or I say, that's so-and-so's job. So if you have something, go to so-and-so, because that's really their job or their role. So I put them in the spotlight. I step out of it and I say, this is the person who owns this role. They are responsible for it. Go to them. And I do it in front of everybody. So I'm saying, I'm not the person anymore. Go to this person. And if somebody does come to me, I put them back to that person and I say, no, that's so-and-so's role. You need to go to them. Or they'll ask me something. And I said, the person who has that answer is so-and-so, because that's their area. So sometimes they just need some guidance, to go back to the right people. And it also it's empowering the people who are holding those roles, right? And owning those tasks. It's very confusing in companies. And I've seen this a lot, where, we've had to coach people through this, and it's where they're making an exception for a team member. Maybe it's their child that's working there, like their son or their daughter. Maybe it's their cousin or their uncle, or, their wife or their husband or something like that, to where they're like, okay, we're going to hire that person, and they're going to work in that department, and so-and-so's their boss. But then that so-and-so, he or she never gets to be that boss, because that person, anytime they have a problem, they run to the family member, they run to the business owner, and they say, hey, I have this problem. I don't like that this person is doing this, even though it's a violation of the company immutable laws or the policies or procedures. and then the exception is made for that person and they get away with it, or the behavior is acceptable. And, it's really bypassing that leader in the company or the person who's in charge of that area. And what it's doing is it's saying, hey, our immutable laws and our policies in this company are fluid. You don't have to follow them 100%. We make exceptions. And that's just something we do here. So you're saying it's okay, or certain people are allowed to violate the rules.
So that's why I love the immutable laws, because it's not me that has to hold them accountable. It's the immutable laws that are holding them accountable. So it's not, bad Uncle Steve or mean cousin Steve or whatever, and I've made the mistake of hiring family members because they were out of work and they needed a job, and they came here, and guess what? They acted like it was a job. It was just another paycheck until they left. And sometimes I've had family members come here and stay here for 20 years and assume leadership roles, grow divisions, and really excel. But, with the immutable laws, now it's a tool that I can use it, my managers can use it. So when a team member is not following the immutable laws, it's like, hey, these are the immutable laws. These are the expectations. This is a tool. This is what you're violating. Tell me your plan to fix that. What's your plan going forward so you're not doing that? And it puts it back on them, puts the responsibility back on them. And that's why it's such an important tool. So one of the things with the one-on-ones and the immutable laws and the safe and supported, when I talk to a coaching client or even a friend in the industry or a business, when they tell me about a certain team member they're having a lot of problems or challenges with, my first question will be, how's the one-on-ones going? And 99% of the time is, oh, we stopped doing that. It didn't work. And I said, so how was the issue or challenge when you were doing the one-on-one? Oh, we didn't have an issue or challenge. So now that you're not doing the one-on-ones, you have the challenges again. Yeah, that's right. But the one-on-ones didn't work. Yeah, that's right. I'm like, okay, let's back up the bus. So let's start the one-on-ones. Let's just do it today or tomorrow. Let's schedule that. And then I have a conversation with them 2 days later. They're like, oh yeah, we straightened that out. It was just this lack of communication. And that's where the one-on-ones are so important. So yeah, we as the owners, we really have to live our own immutable laws and allow people to call us out on it when we're not living it and say, they need course corrections. So the immutable laws doesn't mean you're never going to break them. It's a guideline. It's the lines on the highway. Do I ever not swerve out of the lines? Absolutely. Once in a while I will, but I know where the lines are.
Yeah. Yeah. So those one-on-ones are important to, create that space and have those conversations, and also define expectations. Another way, and we've been seeing this in our emerging leader program to empower your leaders, is to get them involved in the strategic planning and decision-making in the business, right? So it's going to raise their awareness of what are our goals? What are our 90-day goals? What are our annual goals? What's the decision tree? What are the deal breakers? What are the non-negotiables? What's our plan for this year? So really getting them involved in, which we just finished the Business Accelerator Kickstarter workshop, where it brought you through developing your mission, your vision, your purpose, your core values, setting up benchmarks, getting your goals set, and bringing it all into a strategic plan. We had owners and emerging leaders in that class that were doing it together. And if this is something you're interested in, we're doing it again in February this year, so keep an eye out for that. But it was so empowering to those emerging leaders and the way that they were coming together and the discussions that they were having to move the business forward. It was almost like, hey, owner, yeah, you can go step aside. These are my tasks I'm going to get done. And I want to sit down and talk to you about them and see how, what you envision on me doing this. So it was them really stepping into that role and owning it.
And, we saw it firsthand. It blew some of the owners' minds what these emerging leaders came up with for their visions. I mean, two of the emerging leaders shared their vision stories, and it blew us away. People were like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, it's just an amazing. But the owner allowed that and gave the space and support for it, and really, it's allowing him to bring that company into its own a new life, a new level. But having the space for the emerging owners to write out that mission, vision, and purpose. When we did it with my team earlier this year, I'm like, hey, when you're working on your vision, I want you to write about the company you're going to be working at in 5 years, the company you're building. It's your company. You're building it. What is it going to look like in 5 years? Not what I'm going to build, because I wanted their buy-in, and their visions were mine was narrow with goals and development, but their visions were much more in depth and wider with possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing what they bring to the table when you make the space for them. So as we tie up today, I want to just take a few minutes to talk about evaluating your leadership team. Like, what does this look like? And this is something we've implemented and we have happening regularly in our company, not just for our leadership team, but our team overall. So we have our one-on-ones that we do. We do those every other week. Some companies do them weekly. Some companies, do them monthly. I feel like at least in every other week is enough time for, to check the pulse, right? How are things going? We also do what we call check-ins. So we have a form that our team fills out quickly. It's just kind of, us providing a space for them to send the managers and the leaders like, hey, this is what I'm focusing on. This is what I'm doing. Here's a quick update. It takes me maybe 15 minutes to review 4 people's check-in, and I feel extremely informed. We use a platform called 15Five to do this in. So for companies that I would say at least, are larger companies, it would be phenomenal for. We're about a team of 10. So it really supports our team in moving quickly through our accountability and our check-ins. And then the other thing I would suggest is what we call 360 annual review. So this is where we're providing the space for our team to say, hey, this is how I feel I'm doing, and this is what my focus is on, and this is where I want to grow. And then we provide feedback as their manager saying, this is where I've seen you grow, and this is where I want to see you grow more. These are some of the challenges we had this year. This is what you did really well. Keep doing it. I love it. So it's giving them a really good feedback. We base our increases off of these because they also they house their KPIs and OKRs for the year. So their key performance indicators, like what they're responsible for. And if we want to give them a raise or, they're up for a pay increase, we're not basing it off of emotions. We're basing it off of facts. And they can see it in their review, and they know the potential of, are they going to get this percentage to this percentage of increase, and based off of their performance is what they get. So it's really tied, to their performance in the business and how they're showing up. And it's letting them know even further, hey, where do you want to grow to? And what are the expectations of those?
So what they've done this year, what they need to do to complete it. So we're looking at that. And then we have our annual review as far as numbers, production, gross profit margin. Daily, there's a lot of tracking going on. We're also tracking gross profit margin by job for landscaping. So if it's a 2 or 3 day job or a 2-week job, that job's being tracked and they get to see the numbers. For our lawn techs, they do see their daily production rates. And we know it's very interesting. We do a very different concept. A lot of lawn care companies are doing production by day, by goal. We do what we need to have done. So their hourly rate is being tracked, but if they need to do extra lawns or additional lawns, that's on their list. We don't set a limit of square feet or dollars per day. It's really what the team needs to have done so the team can win and get their goals. So that's kind of where we're doing. Like right now, we're finishing up our 1,000-day development plan for what we had in store this year, and we'll start where are they and what they need to do for next year. Some of our team is a little bit behind. Some of them are a little bit ahead. And that's my 1/3 rule. 1/3 of my team is going to be ahead. 1/3 of my team is going to be right on schedule. 1/3 of my team is going to be behind in that. So that's kind of measuring. But it's a lot of numbers. And we also track, how are we doing in our profit first cash management system? Where are the allocations? We're tracking how are we doing in our pumpkin plan? Are we serving our sweet spot customer? How many customers are we going to cancel this year? That's a KPI. We need to know we're going to cancel at least 20 people traditionally, statistically. So those are some of the things we're looking at.
Excellent. So I want to just summarize our key points that we discussed through part 1 and part 2 of these episodes. So one is leadership is crucial for small businesses, and investing in leadership development can have long-term benefits. Strategies for identifying potential leaders within a small business include looking for specific qualities, strengths, and traits, as well, like who do you need on your team? Establishing a structured leadership development program is important for small businesses. It's something, again, if we have a culture whether we're creating it or not. So do we want to create it, or do we want our team to create the culture? Mentoring and coaching play a significant role in leadership development. By implementing these programs in small businesses, we can have challenges, right? So it's like, don't be afraid of those. Don't be unaware. Creating this is going to create some challenges as well, but there's always getting to the other side. And empowering leaders to make decisions, to take ownership is important, as well as involving them in strategic planning and the decision-making process. So that's really going to invite them to the seat at the table and allow them that space to really own that role. And evaluating the performance and effectiveness of the leadership team is crucial. And the strategies for continuous improvement and evolving the team over time should be implemented. So know, again, this is a journey. It's not a race. It's something that you're going to slowly improve year after year after year. And one day you'll get there and you'll go, hey, now let's just make these little tweaks every once in a while.
Thank you for joining us. Good job today, Christine.
Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
the show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit.